Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Scorebook Stories. I am Alec. I hope you all are having a wonderful time. I really hope you all are enjoying the show. And today we are moving into the National League Central. Now, the NL Central, in my opinion, is probably the weaker of the three or weakest of the three National League divisions. They have really good ball players. I just don't know what it is, but usually the only team, at least in my recent memory that I can think of, the only team that really makes the playoffs from the NL Central is the division championship. So this division really matters to all five teams that are in it. And we're going to kick things off with the team that finished in fifth place last year, and that is the Pittsburgh Pirates. Listen, I am a passive fan of the Pittsburgh Pirates. I think the amount of young stars that they have make them enjoyable to watch, and it is fun to think of what if. But based on the history of the Pittsburgh Pirates, all I really think about and all I really can think about is when are these stars going to show their dominance and show their skill and show what the Pirates developed in another uniform. I hate that. Like, the Pirates, I think, could have been a dominant team for a while, but they just never hang on to anybody. And it really stinks. But either way, this offseason, they added Tommy Pham. Though he's not really a superstar anymore, he's definitely an improvement in the outfield compared to Connor Joe. Connor Joe will be on the way out. I can't remember off the top of my head where he will be playing next year or if he is signed anywhere yet. Don't really remember. If you remember, leave a comment. Let me know. I'll probably get there eventually. But Tommy Pham is a pretty good ball player. I think he's going to help out the Pirates a little bit more when it comes to veteran presence and developing some of these younger guys. Like Jack Sawinski, I really think needs help in terms of development and player growth. I think he's a guy that can really benefit from having somebody like Tommy Pham on the roster. They also added Spencer Horwitz to play first base, who has just over 100 games played at the MLB level. Not a whole lot of power, but he has an average above 260. So that will probably help turn the lineup over a little bit, because I see him probably as a bottom of the lineup kind of guy right now. So we'll see where he ends up slotting in. They also added Caleb Ferguson and Tim Meza. That's really going to help them out with a little bit more reliability in the bullpen. But I'm not really still all that confident in the Pirates bullpen. They've historically had a rough bullpen. They've had one or two solid starters, but a little bit weaker of a bullpen. But these two guys, I think, are going to be a big help in the bullpen on specific days, which we're going to get into in a couple minutes. Not even. But either way, they also are bringing McCutchen back for yet another year, as well as Adam Frazier is returning. And these guys definitely are going to add experience and depth. Kutch is most likely just going to DH mostly, and Frazier is going to play probably a lot at second, filter in at shortstop and third base, maybe float out into the outfield every now and then. Frazier is just a solid utility guy that I think can get the job done no matter where on the field he ends up playing. Some of the guys that will no longer be in Pittsburgh are Rowdy Tellez, who was kind of Rowdy Tellez, I feel real bad for. From what I read, he was very close to a bonus in his contract, and he was let go by Pittsburgh. I don't think that's cool. That's not good at all. Aroldis Chapman will be exiting. Yasmani Grandal will be exiting. And I honestly do not anticipate an NL Central championship coming to Pittsburgh this season at all. I really wonder if the Pirates are going to try to put their players in the best positions to win. In years past, it has felt like they don't want to win. They're just content with, hanging out and playing some baseball games every day and moving this train right along. But I thought once they signed Paul Skeens, they saw how dominant he was. They gave Brian Reynolds a nice contract solidifying his role in Pittsburgh. I really thought they were going to try to do something and turn the club around, but it's not really looking like that's going to end up being the case. They do have a lot of really good players in their minor league system. I talked about one of them a few weeks ago in Bubba Chandler. He is a stud. He is going to be a very, very good pitcher. But I really don't know if the Pirates are looking to win now or if they're just going to hope that they can hang on to everybody until all of these minor league studs end up making their debut in the show. But adding Ferguson and Meza definitely will help the bullpen on days when Falter and Oviedo are getting the start. I do not think those two are very strong, but I will say at the end of the day, the Pirates really need to get guys on base and score runs. That seemed to be a big issue last year for him as well. But adding Pham, Horwitz, bringing Frazier back, I think that's definitely going to help their offense get on base. I think the averages of those three guys are solid enough to help get a couple extra base runners every inning. Is it going to put runs on the board? Hopefully. That's going to depend on the rest of the lineup going through. But overall, I don't think that the additions are enough to put the Pirates into playoff contention, let alone a divisional championship. So I think the Pirates they're going to do just fine. Maybe they'll have a winning season this year, but I don't have high hopes. I really think though that they're probably going to end up making me eat my words for the first month or so here. Pirates historically, I think, since I really started statistically following it more and more, they've dominated the first like month or so, and then that's kind of about it. So the Pirates could shut me up for about a month, and then I could be saying how awesome they are, and they look like they're going to go on a run. But MLB ball is a long season. The Pirates are going to have to sustain that first month of success all year long. So we'll see if they're able to do it. But if you're a Pirates fan, I wouldn't get my hopes up. Next up, finishing in fourth place last season, we have the Cincinnati Reds. Gavin Lux is going to be a huge help for the infield with the Reds after the exit or the trade of Jonathan India. Austin Hage is a solid outfielder who is going to be joining the roster as well. He struggled a little bit in Philadelphia, but I really think that Austin Hayes is looking to prove that he is an everyday guy. I think he set that standard for himself when he was in Baltimore, came over to Philadelphia and struggled a little bit, but I think now that he's in Cincinnati, he'll be able to turn things around and prove that he's a top guy. Also, Jose Trevino is one of the better defensive catchers in the MLB, and I think he's going to be a great addition to Cincinnati for the upcoming season. He's not a superstar at the plate. He gets on base, he gets some good hits, but I think his value is mostly on his defensive ability. He is very, very good behind the plate, and I think uh, that kind of catcher is something the Reds definitely need to try to get some of those questionable calls on the edges of the plate, lower in the zone. I think Jose Trevino's defensive ability and framing is enough to help get the Reds a couple extra wins this season. They also had Brady Singer. He's going to be a huge boost in the rotation and add a few extra innings in every game as opposed to what the Reds are used to seeing. I think he's going to be able to go a little bit deeper and get the Reds probably more onto a winning record throughout the rest of the season. Some of the key losses for the Reds were Ty France, Med Rosario, and Jonathan India. I think those losses could end up hurting them to begin the year, but we'll have to see how spring training ends up going to see how they fill those different positions. Second base, I don't think really is going to be that big of a problem for them. The Reds, I really think, are a solid team that are probably going to linger around the top of the division this season for a good portion of it. Gavin Lux is going to add a lot of experience to the infield. He's going to help with Ellie De La Cruz when it comes to maturity as a defensive player. As De La Cruz improves, I think the Reds will improve as well. As the Reds improve, then Cincinnati will become a more attractive place for players in the offseason in free agency. And I think that's a big problem for a lot of these teams in the Central. Their city just is not very attractive to a lot of guys when it comes to the off-season stuff and free agents. I don't think want to go to some of these cities that are in the NL Central. Same thing goes with the AL Central a little bit too. I think it's just the location of those cities and those ball clubs is not too appealing. But I think as the Reds get better, that will turn around for them a little bit. I also would not be surprised if a big move sometime ahead of the deadline for the Reds happens if they are at most 8 games out of a playoff spot. If they're close, if they are on the edge, I would not be shocked if they go out and try to get a big name and dump off some prospects to try to win now and get themselves into the playoffs. Last season, De La Cruz, McLean, Steer, Stevenson were a lot of fun to watch. Those guys were so much fun, and I really enjoyed watching them play. So I think that not really much needs to change. I think these guys need to take control of this team and make it their own, create their identity, and just do everything they can to get better every single day. The more these guys improve, the better this team will become. And that's speaking mostly for offensive ability and their defensive skill set as well. When it comes to pitching and the starting rotation, right now I think it's lacking a smidge. I think if there is a big move to be made, that's where they target. They're going to target a pitcher that can be in the rotation right now, or they're going to bolster the bullpen a little bit. Those are really the only question marks around the Reds. But I say it all the time that every team can use more pitching. 7MM Sports is your hub for all things Seven Mountains Media Sports. You can watch the latest of Sports Talk with Steve Jones episodes. You can find what station you can listen to your favorite Penn State sports team on, and you can even get live social media updates all the time. All of these things are available along with every single show produced by Seven Mountains Sports over at 7mmsports.com. Next up, we have the St. Louis Cardinals, who have done nothing. They've done nothing at all. Paul Goldschmidt, Andrew Kittredge, Kyle Gibson, Lance Lynn, out the door, gone. They're not there. The fact that the Cardinals added nobody this offseason, to date anyway, up until today, the day of recording, this is concerning. It's very concerning to me. Wilson Contreras is projected as the opening day first baseman in St. Louis. I don't think this is an improvement from Paul Goldschmidt. Wilson Contreras is a good player. I really enjoy watching him play. I think he's a very good catcher. Ivan Herrera has proved over his 100-ish games at the MLB level that he is ready to take that everyday role behind the plate. But Contreras to first base does not feel like the best option to me. I don't think that that's the move. There probably has to be some minor leaguer who's close enough to ready to take that first base spot and have Wilson Contreras DH or something. I do not think that Contreras to first is the right move. And losing Goldschmidt, I think they should have gone out and tried to get a first baseman. I have a feeling that the Cardinals are going to look to move on from Contreras, and they're going to look to move on from Lars Nootbaar and Nolan Arenado. If these guys are on the block, I think St. Louis has to be asking for their stud first baseman. They have to be looking for their guy at first base that is going to hold things down and be the captain out there on the infield. That's what they need the most, in my opinion. I think Nolan Arenado is a great ball player, but if nobody's really over at first for him to throw the ball to, I don't see this team succeeding. St. Louis does have some skill, but they lost good pitchers, their first baseman, and that usually means an organization is going to bring in someone to fill each of those roles. They didn't. That's a problem. The only games that I have any real confidence that the Cardinals will be a favorite to win or can win is when Sonny Gray is going to be pitching. Honestly, Gray is going to be a good pitcher for 30 or more starts and is projected to have a sub 3.5 ERA going into this season, with every other starter projected well over a 4 ERA. It doesn't look good for the Cardinals this season. With the lack of roster improvement in St. Louis, this means the Cardinals are likely headed for a rebuild if they're not already trying to do that now. With the young skill that is on the Cardinals, I think moving Newtbar, Arenado, Contreras for MLB ready prospects would be the best option. I think that's the best plan. I'm not in the front office, obviously, but I think that is what the Cardinals are going to look to do. I'm already hearing a ton of trade rumors for Arenado to a number of different teams. What I think is the most likely to happen is for him to get moved to the Yankees, but he does have a no trade clause, so he can shut down that trade if he doesn't want to go to New York at all. What I was hearing was Arenado was looking to be a Boston Red Sox. However, with the signing of Alex Bregman in Boston, I don't think Arenado is being looked at by Boston anymore. So if he ends up leaving St. Louis, I can't really call where it would end up being unless the Yankees are really the only option and he decides to let it happen. Next up, we have the Chicago Cubs. The biggest addition for the Cubs heading into 2025, obviously, was Kyle Tucker. He's going to bring a lot of positive things to this team offensively, and he's going to be a very reliable defender out in right field. Carson Kelly also joins the team and is projected as the backup catcher right now, but I would expect him to see a good amount of starts throughout the season as of right now. John Birdie also joining the Cubs, who I think is probably going to see a lot of time at third base until Matt Shaw gets his bearings at the big league level and proves that he can be an effective third baseman for the Cubs. Matthew Boyd is joining the rotation. Very solid rotation for the Cubs, and I think Matthew Boyd is just going to add some help there. I also think that adding Ryan Presley, Ryan Brazier, Caleb Thielbar, and Colin Rea are all huge additions to the bullpen for the Cubs. Some of the key losses is Nick Madrigal, Christian Bethancourt, and Kyle Hendricks. Some really good ball players leaving Chicago, but I think there are equal or better players on their way in for the Cubs here. So I don't see a lot of downside to the offseason for the Chicago Cubs. Boyd is a great replacement in the rotation for Kyle Hendricks, along with the other studs that are in this rotation, like Justin Steele, Jamison Tyone, and I'm going to say this name wrong, so correct me, please. Please correct me because I really want to know how to say this guy's name. I've looked it up and I found 4 different pronunciations. Shoto Imanaga, I believe. Not certain. Please correct me. I want to be able to say this guy's name correctly. I've heard it said different ways, so I want to make sure I'm right. I'm just going to refer to him as Shoto. Shoto, Justin Steele, Jamison Tyone, right in front of Boyd in the rotation. I really think that this Cubs team is going to be solid on the mound to start off games. The bullpen additions are going to be able to hold things down past the 6th easily. If the Cubs are able to get to the 6th with a starter, turn things over to the bullpen, they're going to win games, and they're going to win games consistently. I would not be surprised if the Cubs try to add another left-handed pitcher to the bullpen, though, seeing as they only have one lefty in the bullpen right now. I think adding at least one more lefty will be a huge help to that bullpen, especially when you get into some of the heavy left-handed loaded batting lineups that are out there. there's a good amount of them. So if you can manage to have a lefty lineup and you got to move your bullpen quickly, could be a bit of a problem. But overall, I really think that the Cubs team is in a good position to make a push for the division, which based off of previous years and the skill in the East and the West, the Cubs may need to win the division to get themselves into a playoff spot. Stay up to date on everything going on in the sports world by heading over to Seven Mountain Sports on Facebook, Seven Mountain Sports on X, on Instagram. We are on all of your favorite platforms, and you do not want to miss out on a single thing going on here at Seven Mountain Sports. And finally, we have the Milwaukee Brewers, who finished 2024 in first place and lost 2-1 to the Mets in the wild card round. The Brewers added very little when it comes to their defensive ability and offensive talent. Caleb Durbin is adding a little bit of depth to the roster as a utility player, but he does have minor league options. So it is possible that Caleb Durbin does not make the opening day roster for Milwaukee. It's possible. I do think that he has the skill to make this roster, but depends on how he does this spring. Also joining the Brewers along with Durbin is Nestor Cortez. Cortez had a little bit of a down year last year with the Yankees, but I really think that we're going to see his usual production this season, jumping into a rotation with Freddie Peralta, Tobias Myers, who also I'm not confident if he's going to be on the opening day roster, but he's projected to be right now. And when you hear me say projected, I'm using Fangraphs. I use Fangraphs for a lot of stuff. It really helps break down every single stat. Sponsor me, Fangraphs. Anyway, Tobias Myers, Aaron Cavalli, and Aaron Ashby. Aaron Ashby is another guy who I'm not positive is going to make the opening day roster, but I think he has a really good chance. But this rotation right now, projected rotation, is solid. And I think Nestor Cortez joining it, he's going to be able to see his usual success, I think, especially in the National League Central. Some of the key losses are Willie Adames, Frankie Montas, Joe Ross, Gary Sanchez, and Devin Williams. Although, in my personal opinion, Gary Sanchez is not really that big of a loss. Offensively, yes, I think he's a pretty big loss. Defensively, not really. Anyway, the rotation in Milwaukee feels a bit incomplete, in my opinion. Brandon Woodruff right now is expected to be on the IL on opening day, which could potentially hurt the Brewers a little bit. Once every 5, 6, 4 games, depending on how some of these younger guys end up doing. But once Woodruff is back in the rotation, I think it'll be a little bit more solid, a little bit more experienced. I think the Brewers are going to run into less issues when it comes to their starting rotation and when it comes to getting length out of the starters. But the lineup will be very similar to 2024 with no real new additions and established threats joining the Brewers in the offseason. Yelich and Hoskins will be the clear leaders of this Brewers team heading into 2025. And based on the potential depth, I really think Yelich and Hoskins, who have both had injury history, are really going to need to do everything in their power to remain healthy and remain in the lineup for the entire season. Maybe on some of the getaway days, give these guys a rest. I know it's a basketball term, but load management for these two guys is going to be very, very important. I think that the Brewers just have limited depth when it comes to their bench, that they're gonna need Yelich and Hoskins every day, and it's tough, and it's really hard for a team like the Brewers to put together a super competitive lineup when you don't really have the depth for it. So hopefully Yelich and Hoskins have a long, healthy, and successful seasons that helps the Brewers stay at the top of the division. But I do think it may be a bit of a down year for the Brew Crew, regardless of Yelich and Hoskins' health, just because it's a little bit of a weaker division in baseball. The Cubs went out and really tried to get better. So I think the Milwaukee Brewers may see a little bit of a less successful season than last year. Like instead of getting 93 wins, maybe they get 85 to 90, somewhere in there. Maybe I'm not 100% sure, but I would think that the Brewers end up possibly in second place, which is actually where I have them for my NL standings prediction. I have the St. Louis Cardinals finishing 5th because I am anticipating their stars to exit via trade sometime in spring training or early in the season. So I project that the Cardinals will finish last in the division, making the Pirates fourth, Reds third, Brewers second, and the Cubs will take the division. The St. Louis Cardinals, like I said, haven't done anything to replace the talent and leadership that they lost. And all the rumors moving around that they're going to be moving some of their key pieces. They're not really going to have a lot of established, confirmed talent left on their roster. The Pirates, like always, just kind of lack serious bullpen help and seem a little limited in run scoring ability. They're probably going to do pretty solid for the first month and a half, 2 months. They usually do. They usually play really well at the beginning, and then it starts to slip, and they can't seem to get it back. I don't know why, but if they can hang on to some momentum that they're able to grab early in the year, maybe they can move up in this. But right now, based on previous years, I'm going to put them at fourth. I think Cincy will either win the division or do enough to just stay ahead of Pittsburgh and St. Louis. They are a really odd team for me. They're young. They're a lot of fun to watch. They have a lot of good plate coverage. They are very good at hitting home runs. They're very good at getting on base. They're good at stealing bases. They're solid defensively. I don't know what it is. I think they are a miss big, hit big type of team. Sometimes I'm going to be out there watching the Reds, and it's going to be like watching a minor league game with just some small errors. It just doesn't look like they're ready for MLB ball. And other days they're going to be looking like the Yankees of the late 90s, just dominating everybody. It's a really weird team, but if they can manage to figure out some consistency, I think the Reds actually have a shot to win this division. But either the Brewers or the Cubs right now are my pick to come away with the division. And I really think that if they want to make a playoff run, they're going to have to win this division. I think the talent in the NL East and the NL West is too much for a second NL Central team to find their way into a wild card spot. The only reason that I think the Cubs will come away with the division right now is because they added more pieces and really tried to improve this offseason. As long as their key improvements can stay healthy and stay on the field and stay productive, I think the Cubs are the clear choice to pick to win the National League Central. We'll see. I can't wait for spring training. It's starting to ramp up. Pitchers and catchers have all reported as of today that I'm aware of. And I think all the players will be there very, very soon, within the week. I cannot wait. Spring training baseball is just around the corner, and opening day is a little bit over 1 month away. I cannot wait. I'm so excited. It's going to be a great time. But before we talk about opening day, I'm getting way too far ahead of myself. We are going to dive in to the National League West next week, right here on Scorebook Stories.